Savannah in May has a scent I'll never forget. A blend of sweet magnolia blossoms, peach cobbler from corner bakeries, and old bricks that soaked up a century of sun. It was the last week of school before summer break, and the River Street flea market buzzed with its usual chaos: gospel music from a Bluetooth speaker, church ladies selling boiled peanuts, and tourists fanning themselves under wide-brimmed hats. I was 17, lugging a canvas backpack and trying not to sweat through my cotton uniform. Cassidy Ray, my best friend since third grade, tugged at my arm and pointed toward a booth nestled between a used bookstall and someone hawking dream catchers. "There she is," she whispered. "Miss Moira Lou, the fortune teller." I rolled my eyes. "Cass, really? You believe in that stuff?" "She's not just anyone," Cassidy said, already dragging me forward. "She told Haley Thomas that her mama would remarry, and boom, 2 months later she's walking down the aisle with her old high school sweetheart." "That's called coincidence," I muttered, shifting my weight as the Georgia sun pinned us down like bugs under glass. But Cassidy wasn't listening. Miss Moira Lou sat in a foldable chair, wrapped in shawls the color of nightfall. Her skin was the deep brown of old leather, eyes dark and glassy like a doll's, framed beneath wiry silver curls that twisted under a wide-brimmed black hat. She wore bracelets that clinked when she moved, rings on every finger, some missing stones, some glowing with faded opal. Cassidy offered a crumpled $10 bill. "She wants a reading," she said, motioning to me. "I don't," I started, but Miss Moira Lou silenced me with a look. Her gaze landed on me like a weight, and for a second I forgot how to breathe. "You," she said, her voice low and cracked like dry bark. "Sit down, baby. You're the one I'm supposed to see." I hesitated, then sat across from her on a creaky stool. The air between us felt thicker than before, as if something unseen had settled on my shoulders. She reached across the table, palms up. "Left hand, child." Her fingers were warm, strong, and oddly electric. The moment she touched my palm, something sharp flickered behind her eyes. She studied my hand like it held a map only she could read. Her expression shifted, from amused to alert, from curious to afraid. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Your lifeline breaks and then picks up again. You'll be tested, girl, more than once. But you're strong." I swallowed, suddenly uncomfortable. "Tested how?" She leaned closer. "When the time comes, don't get in the crimson car. I don't care who calls you. If you do, it'll be a long way back." My skin prickled. "What kind of car?" "Crimson," she repeated. "That deep bloody red. Not candy apple. Not cherry. Crimson like dried petals." Then she let go of my hand, and just like that, the air returned to normal. The weight lifted. Cassidy blinked. "Okay, that was creepy." We walked away quickly, the $10 bill still resting on the corner of her table. "You think she was serious?" Cassidy asked, trying to sound amused. "I mean, what does that even mean? Don't get in a red car." "I don't know," I said quietly. "But did you see her eyes when she said it?" That night, I mentioned it to my parents over dinner. Mama, ever the English teacher, laughed softly and quoted some poem about fate and choice. Daddy, a retired Army engineer, just nodded. "Stay away from strangers offering you rides," he said, dunking his cornbread into a bowl of collard greens. "No mystic necessary." They weren't worried, so I tried not to be either. But that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan whirling above me, her words echoed in my head again. "Don't get in the crimson car." 2 years passed. I was no longer the girl who believed in palm readings or held her breath when someone said the word destiny. College had a way of sanding the edges off your wonder. I was now a freshman at a small university just outside Savannah, living in a dorm with beige walls and plastic blinds that never quite closed all the way. I studied education, planning to teach literature like Mama, hoping I might one day walk into a classroom and change some kid's life the way a few teachers had changed mine. Cassidy and I ended up in the same program. By pure coincidence or fate, I no longer knew the difference. She'd wanted to study graphic design, but her parents talked her into something more reliable. So we were together again, like high school never ended. Same laugh, same wild ideas, same reckless energy that I admired and feared in equal measure. One Friday afternoon in June, Cassidy burst into our dorm room like a summer storm, cheeks flushed, eyes sparkling. She tossed her backpack onto the floor and waved 2 gold-trimmed invitations like victory flags. "You will never guess," she announced out of breath, "what just fell into our laps." I raised an eyebrow, still cross-legged on my twin bed, highlighter in hand. Unless it's a miracle that lets me skip next week's psych exam, I'm not interested. "Better," she said, flopping down beside me. "It's the summer kickoff party at Eden Club with Elijah Devereaux." My stomach flipped. That name sounds expensive. "It is," she grinned. "His dad owns half the riverfront. Malls, hotels, condos with infinity pools. Elijah's like Savannah's Gatsby." I blinked. "And we're invited to this, why?" "Because I'm dating his best friend. You remember Wesley, guy from the computer lab with the floppy hair and lattes that smell like ambition? He and Elijah are tight, and he got us in. And no," she added before I could ask, "this is not some weird double date thing. There'll be a whole crowd. Music, cocktails, lights by the pool. Just say yes, Rachel." I hesitated. Something in my chest tightened, old and distant. "What?" she asked, watching me carefully. "Nothing, elite. I promised Mama I'd visit home this weekend." Cassidy rolled her eyes. "You live 30 minutes away. Visit Sunday. Come on, girl, you need this. Finals fried your soul. You haven't worn mascara in a month." That made me laugh. "That's because I cry when I apply it." "Exactly," she said, squeezing my arm. "Tonight we sparkle." I called Mama an hour later, told her Cassidy had roped me into something, and I'd be back Sunday afternoon. Her silence on the other end wasn't angry, just heavy. "Where is this party?" she finally asked. "Some club out by the river," I said, avoiding the name on the invitation. "Cassidy says it's legit. She'll be with me the whole time." "I don't like it," Mama said quietly. "Strange people, alcohol, young men with too much money. It's a recipe." "I'm not drinking," I assured her. "And I'll text you when we get there and again when we leave." "Midnight," she said. "You'll be home before midnight." "Yes, ma'am." But even after I hung up, her voice lingered in my ear, and underneath it, like an echo, "Don't get in the crimson car." I didn't tell her about the prophecy. I hadn't spoken of it in 2 years, not even to Cassidy. It had faded into the dusty corner of memory where childhood fears live. But that night it stirred again, quiet and watchful, waiting. The Eden Club sat beyond the city limits, nestled along the bend of the Savannah River, hidden behind gates wrapped in flowering vines and the illusion of exclusivity. Cassidy insisted we take a rideshare instead of my rusted Corolla. "You can't roll up to a place like Eden in a car that sounds like it smokes cigarettes," she joked. The sun was just dipping when we pulled up. The building looked like something from an old movie. White columns, chandeliers hanging on the porch, music pulsing through the tall windows like the place had a heartbeat of its own. People were already milling around with glasses of champagne, all of them dressed in linen and effortless confidence. I tugged at my second-hand cocktail dress. Deep green, a bit snug at the waist. I had worn it for my high school graduation. It felt out of place here. Cassidy, meanwhile, was glowing. Her red dress hugged every curve, and her curls bounced with every step as she waved to Wesley across the lawn. He jogged over, kissed her on the cheek, and turned to me with a polite smile. "You must be Rachel," he said. "Cassidy's told me you're the sensible one." "I try," I replied, forcing a grin. "Come on," he said, "Elijah's inside. He'll be glad you came." And just like that, We were swept inside the golden blur of music, laughter, and chandeliers the size of small cars. Someone handed me a glass of something pink and fizzy. I declined, asking for juice instead. I noticed the look, half amused, half surprised, but no one pressed. Cassidy disappeared into the crowd with Wesley, and I found myself by the terrace, nursing a glass of orange juice and wondering if Mama was still awake. That's when he appeared. Elijah Devereaux. He wasn't what I expected. No smug smirk. No cufflinks that screamed inheritance. Just a white shirt rolled up at the sleeves, dark hair a little messy, and a smile that walked the line between charm and mischief. "You must be Rachel," he said, handing me a fresh drink. "I've been hearing about you all night." "Hopefully good things," I said. He nodded. "Cassidy says you keep her from spontaneously combusting. That's noble." I laughed despite myself. We talked about college, books, how Savannah smelled better after rain. He had opinions about Flannery O'Connor and could name every Civil War general buried downtown. He was smarter than he looked. Or maybe I just wanted him to be. Time passed too quickly. At one point, I glanced at my phone. 11:47 p.m. "I should go," I said, standing abruptly. "I promised my mom." "I'll drive you," Elijah offered. Cassidy reappeared behind him, her lipstick slightly smudged. "That's perfect," she said. "Wesley's staying, and I didn't bring my phone charger." I hesitated. "Maybe we should get a ride." "Don't be silly," Elijah cut in. "I haven't had that much to drink. Besides, I want to show you something." "What?" He smiled like it was a secret. "My new baby. A gift from my dad for finishing the semester with straight A's. Come on, she's in the back lot." I followed them reluctantly, the gravel crunching under my flats. The lot behind the club was darker, quieter. Fireflies floated above the ground like spirits. Elijah pressed a button on his key fob. Headlights flashed. The car was beautiful. A deep red BMW. New, sleek, gleaming under the security light. But the color wasn't candy red or glossy sports car red. It was something else, richer, darker. Crimson. My blood turned to ice. It was the kind of color you only saw on antique velvet or dried rose petals. My legs refused to move, but Cassidy was already sliding into the back seat, waving at me to hurry. I blinked. My ears buzzed. Somewhere inside me, a girl I used to be was screaming, "Don't get in the crimson car, Rachel." Elijah called, "You okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just a little tired." "You can rest on the way," he said, opening the passenger door with a flourish. I got in. I don't know why. Maybe because Cassidy had. Maybe because it was just easier than arguing. Maybe because I didn't want to seem crazy. But as the door clicked shut beside me and the engine purred to life, something inside me splintered. Grant Holloway, one of Elijah's quieter friends, climbed into the back seat beside Cassidy. "Mind if I tag along?" he asked. Elijah laughed. "Sure, man. The more the merrier." We pulled out of the parking lot, the trees swallowing us whole as we merged onto the empty highway. That's when I remembered the rest of the prophecy. If you do, it'll be a long way back. And still, I said nothing. The road stretched ahead like a ribbon of ink, swallowed by pine trees on either side. The windows were down, and the scent of river water and summer dust filled the car. Somewhere in the back seat, Cassidy was humming along to the music drifting from the radio. I kept my eyes on the shadows outside, trying not to look at the speedometer or Elijah's hands on the wheel. He was driving fast. Too fast. "Elijah," I started. "We're fine," he said, laughing like I'd just asked him to slow down on a roller coaster. "There's no one else out here. The road's ours." The wind picked up, lifting strands of my hair into my eyes. My stomach clenched. My fingers gripped the edge of the seat. Grant leaned forward. "Maybe ease up a little, man." Elijah grinned into the rearview mirror. "You nervous too?" "I just don't feel like peeling Rachel off the windshield tonight." I appreciated the attempt, but Elijah just waved it off. This car handles like a dream. I could drive her with my eyes closed. The engine purred louder as he pressed the gas. The speedometer ticked past 70, then 80, then higher. The trees became a blur of black and green. I turned to look at Cassidy. She had her head resting against the window, eyes closed, smiling like it was all some romantic joyride. I opened my mouth again to speak, and that's when I saw the turn, a sharp bend in the road, a reflective post flickering like a warning. Elijah tapped the brakes, but too late. The tires shrieked as they met the curve. The world tilted. The car jolted hard to the left. The wheels lost grip. I heard Grant shout, heard Cassidy scream. Elijah cursed, trying to correct the wheel, but the road was slick with dew and fallen pine needles. And then the headlights caught a flash of metal. A truck, big, fast, coming right at us. I saw the driver's eyes, wide, panicked, just before the truck swerved, missing us by inches. The impact never came, but the momentum did. The BMW spun, rubber burned. Then the world went weightless. We were off the road, skimming air. Time stretched like molasses. I saw Cassidy's hand reaching out, fingers slow as smoke. Grant's body lunging forward, mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear. Elijah yanking at the wheel like it could change anything. And then I was flying. The windshield shattered like ice. Glass sprayed across my skin. I was weightless, boneless, air and blood and fear. The last thing I saw was the glow of taillights as the crimson car twisted in the dark, spinning, flipping, gone. Silence is different after a crash. It's not still. It's full of echoes, groans from bending metal, the ticking of something hot cooling off, the sound of blood moving through your ears, even when the rest of you can't. Then came the pain, all at once, bright, biting, unbearable. I tried to move. My arms screamed. My back was on fire. I opened my mouth, and no sound came out. There were voices, far away, Cassidy calling my name, Elijah swearing, Grant trying to keep someone calm. Then everything disappeared. Light returned in pieces. First was the ceiling, pale, cracked, unfamiliar. Then the beeping, soft and rhythmic, somewhere near my head. A curtain rustled. The sharp scent of antiseptic filled my lungs. I blinked, tried to sit up and couldn't. "Rachel," someone whispered. "Mama." Her hand touched my cheek, soft and trembling. Her face was pale, lips pressed tight, eyes swollen with sleepless nights. "You're okay," she murmured. "You're safe now, baby. You're here." A doctor appeared beside her, middle-aged, clean-shaven, kind eyes behind rectangular glasses. "Miss Morgan," he said gently, "I'm Dr. Malcolm Hayes. You've been through quite a lot." My mouth was dry as chalk. What happened? I managed to rasp. "You were in a car accident," he said. "Severe trauma. You've been unconscious for nearly 2 days. We stabilized you, performed surgery on your spine and clavicle. The good news is you're alive, and your brain function is intact." I stared at him. "And the bad?" He hesitated, then stepped closer. "There's been damage to your spinal cord. You're experiencing paralysis from the waist down. We'll need time to assess the long-term prognosis. But for now, you won't be able to feel or move your legs." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The words dropped into my chest like stones into deep water. I waited for the splash, the ripple, but all I felt was stillness. No legs, no movement, no way back. I closed my eyes and saw her. "Miss Moira Lou, if you do, it'll be a long way back." She had been right, and I hadn't listened. The first time I tried to move, it felt like my body wasn't mine. My fingers twitched. My arms obeyed, stiff and sore but present. But from the waist down, nothing. Just a heavy silence, like the lower half of me had been erased. Dr. Hayes came in every morning. He adjusted machines, checked vitals, asked how I was sleeping. He never once used the word never. He said things like recovery takes time, and we won't know the full picture for a while. But I saw it in his eyes. That quiet pause before he answered. That soft look when he thought I wasn't watching. Mama didn't leave my side. She read to me when I couldn't sleep, brushed my hair when I was too weak to lift a comb. Daddy sat in the corner, silent, hands folded, eyes burning behind old military calm. I hated that room, hated the beeping, hated the way nurses spoke to me like I might break. But most of all, I hated the moment every morning when I opened my eyes, hoped it had all been a dream, and realized it hadn't. On day 4, Cassidy showed up. She stood awkwardly in the doorway, holding a bouquet of sunflowers in a paper-wrapped cone. Her face was puffy, makeup faded. "Hey," she said. I didn't answer. She stepped inside slowly. I wanted to come earlier, but I didn't know what to say. "You could have said you were sorry," I whispered. "I am," she said quickly, eyes welling up. "God, Rachel, I am so sorry. If I hadn't pushed me, talked me into going, ignored the fact that he was drunk?" "Yeah." She flinched. I didn't know he was going to drive like that. I looked away. Outside the window, a storm was rolling in, gray clouds stacking high like bruises. "He almost died too," she added. "He has a concussion. Broken ribs. Grant's arm is in a cast. Wesley got off with bruises, but we were lucky. So lucky." I let the silence speak for me. Cassidy stepped closer. "I brought your journal." She held out the little leather-bound notebook I kept on my nightstand. "You always said writing helps when everything feels too much." I took it, not because I wanted to, but because it felt like the only part of my old life that wasn't soaked in guilt. "I'll go," she said. "I just wanted to see you. And say I love you." She turned toward the door. "Cass," I called, voice dry and cracking. "You didn't make him drink, but you laughed when he said he'd drive. You didn't stop him." "I didn't stop him. None of us did." She nodded. "I know." Then she left. The next few weeks passed in fragments. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, questions I didn't want to answer, exercises I didn't want to try. Sometimes I made progress. Sometimes I cried just from sitting upright for 10 minutes. One day, Dr. Hayes wheeled in a new machine, a lift system to help me transfer to a chair. "This next phase will be hard," he said, "but I think you're ready." "Ready to what?" I snapped. "Be a burden? Learn how to exist in half a body." He didn't flinch. "Ready to live. You're allowed to grieve what you lost. But don't forget you're still here." I stared at him. "I don't know how to be this version of me." "You'll learn," he said. "The world doesn't get to decide your value. You do." That night, I opened my journal. I didn't write about the pain or the silence or the pity in people's eyes. I wrote about the color of the sky outside my window, the way my mother's voice trembled when she read poetry aloud, the scent of hand lotion and lemon soap. Small things, but they were mine. A week later, I moved back home, but not to our old apartment. Daddy had made a decision while I was in the hospital. He sold our condo and used the money to renovate Grandma's old house on Magnolia Street. "No stairs," he said. We widened the doors, built a ramp. "The garden's still a mess, but we'll fix it." I cried when I saw it, not out of sadness, but something deeper, a grief tangled with gratitude. They were giving me a new life. Not perfect, not what I'd imagined, but real, tangible. And I was beginning to believe maybe that was enough. It rained the day we moved in. Not a thunderstorm, just a slow, southern rain, the kind that made everything smell like wet pine and iron. The movers were soaked by the time they rolled my chair up the new ramp, but Mama insisted on offering them sweet tea anyway. "No one works this hard in Savannah without something cold," she said, shooing Daddy toward the fridge. I hadn't seen the house in years. Grandma's old place had always felt too still, too creaky. But now, with its fresh white trim and jasmine vines curling up the porch railings, it looked like something out of a storybook. The The windows had been lowered. The doors widened. A ramp curved around the front steps like it had always belonged. And inside, the house smelled like lemon polish and new beginnings. My room was at the back, where the sun touched the walls just right in the morning. Mama had brought in soft blankets, pale yellow curtains, and a new desk by the window for journaling. "I figured you'd need a little quiet space to write," she said softly, brushing invisible dust from the bookshelf. "And a view." Outside that window stood the same magnolia tree I used to climb as a girl. It was taller now, thicker around the base, leaves dark and glossy with raindrops. But it was still there, like me, scarred but standing. The hardest part wasn't the pain. It wasn't the chair or the stairs at the grocery store or the way people talked slower to me, like I couldn't keep up. The hardest part was forgiving myself. I replayed that night more times than I could count. The laughter in the car, the hum of the radio, the moment I didn't speak up, or maybe the moment I did, and it wasn't enough. I wanted someone to blame, and for a while that someone was me. But healing is strange. It sneaks up on you, not in grand gestures, but in the way you start noticing the sound of wind through the porch screens, or the way sunflowers tilt their heads toward light no matter how many storms pass through. I started physical therapy again, this time at St. Juniper's Spine and Recovery Clinic, a 30-minute drive into town. The first time I wheeled through the automatic doors, I saw a man with no arms painting with his teeth. I saw a girl with a spinal brace teaching herself how to dance with one leg. I saw life, messy and miraculous and raw. And for the first time since the accident, I felt less alone. Weeks later, Cassidy visited. She parked beneath the magnolia tree, stepping out with a box in her arms. Her face was thinner, her eyes ringed with guilt. "Still can't believe your daddy fixed up this whole place," she said, settling the box on my lap. "It looks like a bed and breakfast from a Hallmark movie." I smiled faintly, just missing the handsome stranger who owns a bakery next door. She chuckled, then bit her lip. I brought pictures, from before and from that night. I thought, maybe if you wanted to talk. I looked at her, really looked at her. The girl who had been with me through first kisses, homecoming heartbreaks, failed math tests, midnight swims, and one terrible, irreversible night. "I don't want to talk about the accident," I said quietly. "Not yet." She nodded. "Okay. But I do forgive you." Her breath caught. "Even if I don't forgive myself." "Especially then." She cried right there on the porch. And this time, I held her. Every night before bed, I rolled myself to the window. I watched the magnolia leaves flutter, felt the wind through the open glass. I thought of all the versions of me that had stood under that tree. Child, teenager, reckless girl in love, broken woman in a hospital bed. And I whispered to the night, "I'm still here." That was enough. For now. It started with the knock. Not the soft kind from neighbors bringing banana bread or church ladies dropping off casseroles. This one was firm, deliberate. I was in the kitchen, rolling backward from the fridge with a pitcher of water balanced on my lap when I heard it. Mama peeked out the window. It's a young man, about your age, holding a camera. She opened the door. "Hi, ma'am. I'm Grant Holloway. I was a passenger in the car that night." My throat closed. I hadn't seen him since the crash. Last I remembered, he was sitting behind me, arguing with Wesley over a playlist. Now, he looked different, older, not in years, but in weight. Like guilt had aged him faster than time. "Can I come in for a moment?" he asked gently. Mama looked at me. I nodded once. He sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, camera case still slung across his shoulder. "I've been filming a documentary," he said, voice low, "about spinal injury survivors. What they go through, the silent part of it. I wanted to ask if you'd consider being part of it." I raised an eyebrow. "You're kidding." "No, I know how it sounds. But after what happened, I couldn't just go back to normal. I needed to face it. So I started telling people stories. Real people. Not actors. Not pity. Just truth. I didn't say anything. He reached into his bag and pulled out a letter. The envelope was creased, worn like it had been carried around too long. This was meant for you. I wrote it 2 weeks after the accident, but I couldn't send it. I hesitated, then took it. He stood up. I'll leave you with it. No pressure about the documentary. Just thank you for listening. I waited until the house was quiet. Then I opened the letter. Rachel, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Maybe I'll have the courage to send it. Maybe not. But I need to try. That night changed all of us. I remember everything. The music, the way you laughed when Cassidy sang off-key, the moment Wesley grabbed the wheel. I remember yelling at him to stop. I remember the silence before the crash. And I remember crawling out and not seeing you move. I was the only one who didn't black out. I saw you. I saw the way your legs didn't move. I wanted to help, but I froze. I hate myself for that. I've watched the footage 1,000 times. From my camera. From the dash. I've analyzed every second, trying to figure out if I could have done more. The truth is, I could have. I've decided to tell stories now. Not for forgiveness. Just for understanding. If you ever want to talk or yell or cry, I'm here. Grant. The next morning, I called him. You can interview me, I said. His breath caught. Are you sure? No. But let's do it anyway. He arrived 2 hours later. No big crew. Just him, a tripod, and a microphone. We filmed on the porch. I told him about the hospital, about the silence in my legs, about the days when getting dressed felt like climbing a mountain. I told him about the anger, the shame, the slow stitching together of something that resembled hope. But I also told him about the tree outside my window, about the way Cassidy cried in my arms, about how Mama still made sweet tea like it was a religion. He didn't interrupt once. When we were done, he said, "You're not just a survivor. You're a storyteller." I smiled. No, I'm just finally learning how to tell the truth. That night, I left the letter on my nightstand, not because I needed to reread it, but because for the first time, I didn't feel alone in the memory. The wedding was small. Nothing like the grand riverfront affairs you'd see in Savannah society columns. Just 20 guests, a few rows of folding chairs under the magnolia tree in our front yard, and a violinist from the local college who played with more heart than precision. I wore a pale blue dress Mama helped tailor to fit my chair, and in place of a veil, I wore the silver comb Grandma left me, the one with the mother-of-pearl lilies carved along its edge. The groom stood barefoot in the grass. Yes, barefoot. Grant Holloway had shown up in my life like a ghost, unresolved, guilt-ridden, carrying a camera and an apology. I didn't expect to let him in. I didn't expect his presence to feel like breath after drowning. But somehow, through all the late-night editing sessions, the quiet porch conversations, and the hours we spent turning pain into testimony, something shifted. Not suddenly, not romantically, just honestly. The first time he kissed me, it wasn't fireworks. It was a whisper, like the universe saying, "You can start again." Cassidy was my maid of honor. She cried more than I did, which was saying something. Mama baked the cake herself, a lemon almond layer with white frosting and flowers she picked from the yard. Daddy built a little arch from cedar branches and draped it in gauze and twinkle lights. I remember wheeling myself down the makeshift aisle and seeing every face I loved smiling back at me. Not with pity, not with sadness, with joy, pure, radiant joy. After the vows, after the kiss, after the laughter and dancing and barefoot, slow steps in the moonlight, I found a moment alone by the porch swing. The air was thick with jasmine. The moonlight caught on the old wind chimes, making them shimmer like they'd been waiting for this moment too. I thought of all the versions of myself I had been. The girl who thought love meant losing yourself. The woman who believed broken meant unlovable. The survivor who mistook silence for strength. And now this, a wife, a storyteller, a woman not defined by what she'd lost, but by what she had dared to rebuild. A week later, Grant and I aired the documentary. It wasn't flashy, just raw footage and soft narration. But it spread faster than we imagined. Shared by nurses, trauma survivors, teachers, mothers, people in wheelchairs who finally saw their truth reflected somewhere besides hospital brochures. We called it Still Here, because that's what we were. Still here, still loving, still healing, still choosing joy even when grief whispered its old songs. One night, months later, I sat by my window while Grant slept, our cat curled up between my feet. A breeze rustled through the magnolia leaves. Somewhere far off, a train passed, low and steady. I reached for the journal on my windowsill and wrote. Today, I laughed without wincing. Today, I stood in my kitchen, hands on the counter, legs braced in my new therapy frame, and made biscuits from scratch. Today, I remembered the crash, and it didn't steal my breath. Today, I let myself be loved. Fully, without fear, without apology. I closed the journal and smiled. The past hadn't vanished. It never would, but it didn't own me anymore. People ask me if I believe in miracles. I don't know how to answer that, but I believe in stubborn grace. I believe in second chances that don't announce themselves. Only knock softly when you're finally ready. I believe in quiet forgiveness, porch swings, camera lenses that capture truth instead of perfection. And I believe in the girl I used to be, the one who lay in a hospital bed, thinking her life was over. She was wrong. It was just beginning. I was holding a mug of peppermint cocoa when the phone rang. I almost didn't pick up. It was a week before Christmas, and the call was from my mother. But something in me still hoped, still believed maybe this year would be different. I answered with more cheer than I felt. Hi, Mom. I was just about to wrap your gift. There was a pause. Then she said it, calmly, coldly, like she was confirming a hair appointment. Don't come for Christmas this year, Sabrina. It'll be better for everyone. The mug slipped slightly in my hand, peppermint foam catching on my wrist. Excuse me, I asked, stunned. Things have been tense. Tyler feels judged, and your father's been stressed. We thought a quiet Christmas without any drama would be best. That word, drama, had always been their way of dismissing anything they didn't want to talk about. Disagreement, drama. Boundaries, drama. Honesty, definitely drama. Before I could respond, another voice chimed in. No hard feelings, right? It was my brother, Tyler. We'll just pretend we don't know you this year. Maybe next year when you're normal again. He chuckled like it was a joke. I didn't hang up. I couldn't. My mother sighed in the background. Sabrina, be reasonable. It's just one Christmas. That night, I sat in my Philadelphia condo alone, surrounded by wrapped gifts and half-lit garlands, wondering what I'd done to deserve being erased like that. I had requested time off from work, picked out presents with care, including a rare 1960s lure for Dad's fishing collection, and even bought the cookies Mom always forgot she liked until she saw them on a plate. I wasn't just uninvited, I was discarded. I told myself I'd be fine, that I'd spend the day in fuzzy socks watching old movies and pretending I hadn't been exiled from my own family. I opened a bottle of red, curled under a blanket, and told myself it was their loss. Then, 2 days later, as I was eating reheated pad thai in front of It's a Wonderful Life, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I let it ring once, twice, and then answered. Is this Sabrina Holloway? The voice was male, firm, older. Yes, I replied cautiously. My name is Benjamin Crane. I'm an attorney with Crane and Mullins in Harrisburg. I'm calling regarding the estate of Beatrice Holloway. The name punched the air from my lungs. My grandmother, I said, voice trembling. She passed away 5 years ago. No, Miss Holloway, he said gently. According to our records, she passed on November 12th of this year. I stood up, so fast my knee knocked over the mug on the coffee table. That can't be right. I would have known there would have been a funeral. I understand this must come as a shock, he said, his tone calm but serious. I believe it would be best if we spoke in person. Are you available to come to our offices this week? I nodded before I remembered. He couldn't see me. Yes, I'll come. After the call ended, I sat there in silence. My grandmother was gone, and no one told me. Not my mother, not my father, not even Tyler. I reached for my phone, scrolling through old texts, old photos, birthdays, garden days, watercolor afternoons. Grandma B had been the one person who truly saw me, who called just because she missed my voice, who remembered which kind of jam I liked. And now she was gone. The thing is, in my heart, I had already lost my parents a long time ago. They just hadn't made it official until that phone call. But my grandmother? Beatrice Holloway had been the last true string tethering me to that bloodline. Now it was severed, and something told me that call from the lawyer was only the beginning. The train ride from Philadelphia to Harrisburg the next morning was quiet, too quiet. I watched trees blur past the window, brown branches clawing at a gray sky. In my lap, I clutched a folder I'd thrown together last minute, just in case the lawyer needed anything. I wasn't sure what I expected to find at the law firm or what I feared. The receptionist led me into a glass-walled conference room, tastefully minimalist. A tall man in a navy suit entered moments later, a leather folder in his hands and weariness behind his eyes. Ms. Holloway, he said, extending a hand. I'm Benjamin Crane. Thank you for coming. Just tell me, I said, folding my coat over the chair. Is this about a will? He nodded. Yes. Your grandmother updated her estate plan 3 years ago and named you as the primary beneficiary. My breath caught. But my family? They didn't say anything. No call, no funeral invitation, nothing. Crane opened the folder and slid a death certificate across the table, followed by a brief obituary. My name wasn't mentioned. I didn't exist. I don't understand, I whispered. Why would they keep this from me? He removed his glasses, setting them down slowly. Because they contested the will, Ms. Holloway. Right after her passing. They claimed she wasn't of sound mind when she made the changes. I stared at him. That's a lie. Grandma was sharp as ever last year. We spoke every other week. Which is why the court dismissed their petition, he said. There were videos. Videos. He nodded, turned his laptop toward me, and pressed play. The screen flickered, then came to life with the familiar glow of sunlight pouring into a small sunroom. And there she was, my grandmother, Beatrice Holloway, her hair whiter, her frame smaller, but her voice was strong. Sabrina, she said, looking directly into the lens. If you're watching this, it means I've passed. I've left instructions with Benjamin to reach you because I don't trust your parents to do it. She smiled sadly. You always deserved better. I should have said more when I was alive. But I want you to know I saw everything. The favoritism, the guilt trips, the cold dismissals. I saw what they did to you. My throat tightened as her voice filled the room. You built a life on your own terms, and they resented you for it. I've left the house to you, the investments, the keepsakes. It's all yours, darling. I've also revoked the power of attorney I gave your mother years ago. She's been borrowing against the house without telling me. I've asked Benjamin to investigate. You deserve to know the truth. The video ended. I was crying, though I hadn't realized it. She knew, I whispered. She really knew. Crane nodded. There are more videos. She recorded several over the course of 2 years, documenting her decisions, her mental state, and her intentions. It left the court with little doubt. I sat back, the world tilting slightly under me. They knew she left it to me, and they still didn't tell me she died. They held the funeral the same week they contested the will, he said. And we tried to reach you, but your mother told our office you'd moved overseas. It wasn't until our investigator found your current address that I was able to call you. I covered my face with my hands. They erased me, I said. They held a funeral without me and pretended I was gone. The house is still in probate, but it will transfer to your name soon. The investment accounts total approximately $600,000. There are personal belongings as well, though some items were removed from the property before the court sealed it. We're compiling a list. Images rushed through my mind. The photos on Facebook, Caroline Denton arranging flowers in Grandma's kitchen, the missing antique table, Tyler's Rolex, the living room that no longer looked like hers. They had gone through her home like it was theirs, like I didn't exist. I looked up at the lawyer, my voice steadier than I expected. What happens next? That depends on you, Ms. Holloway, he said. There are legal options to recover what's missing and to hold certain parties accountable. But emotionally, that's your call. I nodded slowly. I wasn't sure what I would do yet, but I knew one thing. I was done pretending that silence was kindness. I stepped out of the law office into a bright winter afternoon, but the air felt sharp and disorienting. I wasn't just grieving my grandmother now. I was grieving an entire reality I thought I understood. My parents hadn't simply failed me. They had intentionally erased me, while throwing a funeral for the woman who had loved me most in the world. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the video of Grandma B, her eyes filled with warmth and sorrow, telling me she saw what they had done. I scrolled through my camera roll, then over to Instagram, and that's when the pieces started clicking into place. There she was, Caroline Denton, posing with a tray of cookies in my grandmother's kitchen like she'd always belonged there. In the next post, she was opening a gift for my mother. In another, she raised a glass of champagne in what used to be the dining room, the same room where I'd once made watercolor cards with Grandma when I was 7. I zoomed in on the background. The antique side table that used to hold Grandma's pressed flower lamp? Gone. Replaced by something cold and modern. Her cozy plaid armchair, where she'd sip tea and call me darling girl, vanished, replaced by sleek leather. The changes weren't just cosmetic, they were strategic. And Tyler, in the third photo, he held up a Rolex. I knew my family. I knew their finances. My parents had always claimed they were budgeting for retirement, clipping coupons, and driving old cars. But in the last few months, I'd seen a new SUV in the driveway, weekend trips to Maine, a new flat screen mounted in the den, and now a Rolex? Grandma had mentioned loans taken out against the house. Could it be they'd started spending before she was even gone? The more I scrolled, the worse it got. I pulled up Facebook and reread the Christmas post from my mom. So grateful for this peaceful holiday with family and dear friends. Caroline, you are a treasure. A treasure right in my seat. I called Natalie the next morning. She picked up Midjan, still in her robe. Please tell me you're calling with gossip, not grief, she mumbled. It's both, I replied. They buried Grandma. Didn't tell me. Replaced me with Caroline Denton. And now I think they've been stealing from her before she died. Silence. Then, Jesus, Sabrina. I paced the kitchen. They contested the will. They lost. And they told the court I'd moved out of the country. Natalie was wide awake now. Have you talked to them since the call? No, I haven't responded to any of their messages, but it's coming. You realize this isn't just emotional betrayal, she said quietly. This could be financial fraud. I know, I said, staring at the granite countertop that suddenly felt unfamiliar. And the worst part, I almost believed their version of me, the dramatic one, the difficult one, the daughter who never tried. Natalie's voice softened. You tried more than anyone. You were the glue. And when you stopped stretching yourself thin, they snapped. I sat down slowly. I'm not just angry, Nat. I'm haunted by every time I doubted myself because they told me I was overreacting. She exhaled on the line. You ready to stop doubting now? I was quiet for a long time, then nodded. Yes. Later that day, I pulled out an old notebook from my desk drawer. Inside were the records I'd kept from calls with Grandma, little notes about books she liked, flowers she planted, the birthdays she remembered without reminders. I found one line, scribbled from a call 3 months ago. Your mom was asking about your legal name again, middle initial or full. Can't remember which one was on that old deed from the lake house. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now I felt like she'd been trying to tell me something. They weren't just hiding her death. They were hiding what they did before she died. 2 days later, I was back in the conference room at Crane and Mullins. Benjamin Crane greeted me with the same steady calm as before, but this time he slid a flash drive across the polished table. There are 4 more videos, he said. Your grandmother recorded them in the final year of her life. She asked that you view them privately, but I'll be right outside if you need anything. When he left, I exhaled and clicked play. The screen filled again with soft afternoon light from Grandma's sunroom. She looked even thinner than in the first video, wrapped in a knitted shawl I remembered helping her pick out for her birthday. Sabrina, she said, smiling gently, if you're watching this second recording, it means the first one wasn't enough. I suspected it might not be. That's the thing about the truth. It needs to be repeated to sink in. She leaned forward, her tone sharper now. I want to explain about the house. Years ago, during my hip replacement, I foolishly gave your mother power of attorney. She said it would just be for emergencies. But over time, I learned she'd been borrowing against the property without telling me. Small amounts at first, then more. She paused, her lips trembling slightly. I only discovered the extent of it a few months ago. There were loans I never signed for, withdrawals I couldn't explain. When I confronted your mother, she called it family necessity. Said Jake, she caught herself, then corrected, said Tyler needed help, and that I wouldn't understand because I was too old-fashioned. I blinked at the screen, rage rising in my chest like boiling water. I revoked the POA the day after, Grandma continued, her voice firmer now. I also rewrote my will, not because I love them less, but because I cannot reward deception. Sabrina, you have always come to me with truth, with time, with kindness. You called me just to hear my voice. You never asked for anything. The second video ended. The third began. This time, Grandma held up a small notebook, her own. I've kept records, she said. Every suspicious transaction, every item that vanished from this house. The side table, gone after your mother hosted her church friends. My jewelry box, half empty since Tyler came by just to check in. They think I'm not paying attention, but I am. She opened a drawer and took out a velvet pouch. This is for you, she said, lifting out her engagement ring. It's not just about value, it's about dignity. This ring has been in our family for 3 generations. Your mother tried to sell it once, said it didn't fit her style. I kept it hidden after that. My hands trembled. That ring had been the one she showed me every Christmas growing up, spinning it slowly on her frail finger as she told stories about Grandpa Will. The final video played. Grandma looked tired but peaceful. By now you'll know everything. They'll be angry, Sabrina. They'll tell lies. They'll paint you as selfish, dramatic, cold. But you're none of those things. You are clear-eyed, and you deserve better. She smiled one last time. Stand firm, my darling girl. You don't owe them what they took. You don't owe them silence. The screen went black. I sat there in the quiet hum of the conference room, barely breathing. When Benjamin Crane re-entered, he didn't say anything at first, just placed a thick envelope on the table. Court records, full documentation of the house's liens, the bank loans, the misuse of the POA. Also, a list of items removed from the property. I flipped it open. Antique furniture, jewelry, art pieces, books, even family heirlooms, all either missing or transferred illegally before the will went into effect. They cleaned her out, I said, my voice hollow. before she was even cold. He nodded solemnly. We've already moved to freeze any remaining accounts tied to your grandmother's estate. There's also a potential case for financial exploitation of an elder. I stared at the document listing the Rolex, the BMW, the mortgage payments, all connected to my parents and Tyler. And what do I do now? I whispered. Benjamin looked me in the eye. That depends. You can press charges or not. You can reclaim the items, recover damages, even go public if needed. But more than that, you can choose what comes next for you. I closed the envelope slowly. I didn't know yet if I'd pursue the legal path. But one thing was clear. They hadn't just tried to erase me from Christmas. They'd tried to erase me from the family entirely, and they almost got away with it. The invitation came by text 2 days later. From my mother, of course. Polite, polished, poisonous. Sunday brunch at the Hilton in Lancaster. Just to talk. Neutral ground. I stared at the message like it was written in another language. After months of silence, after erasing me from Grandma's funeral and the family Christmas, they wanted to talk. Benjamin Crane advised against going. They'll try to manipulate you, he warned. They'll cry. They'll guilt you. They'll rewrite the story while you're sitting at the table. But I needed to see their faces. I needed to hear the lies from their mouths to believe just how far they were willing to go. So I told him I'd go, but he was to wait in the hotel lobby on standby. Sunday morning came cold and gray. I arrived early, seated myself at a corner table in the Hilton's sunlit restaurant, and ordered black coffee with shaking hands. The smell of fresh waffles drifted past, but my stomach was a knot. At 11 sharp they entered. My mother in a beige trench coat, her lipstick too bright. My father behind her, older than I remembered, like regret, had finally begun to etch lines into his face. And Tyler, wearing a smug little grin and a brand new jacket that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Sabrina, Mom said with a forced smile as they sat down. You look well. I said nothing. I kept my hands wrapped around the coffee cup, grounding myself in its quiet heat. We're here to clear the air, Dad said gently, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away. Tyler leaned back, arms crossed. Yeah, let's get to the part where you give back what Grandma meant for the family. I turned my eyes to him. She did leave it to the family. I'm her family. Mom's lips tightened. Beatrice wasn't thinking clearly. Those videos? Who knows what kind of things she was fed? She made those recordings before she revoked the POA, I said calmly. She knew what you were doing. She listed every transaction, every item, every lie. Dad cleared his throat. Libby, things got complicated. We never meant to hurt you. You just forgot to invite me to her funeral? Told a lawyer I'd moved overseas? Spent her money before she was gone. Don't be dramatic, Tyler snapped. You were never around. You didn't see what we went through taking care of her. I laughed, short and bitter. Taking care of her? Or taking from her? Enough, Mom hissed, glancing at nearby tables. Let's not make a scene. No need. This is your scene, you cast it. I'm just saying my lines. We can fix this, Dad said quickly. Split the inheritance fairly. Keep the house in the family. Fairly. I echoed. Like how you fairly gave Tyler a BMW while Grandma lived on grocery store lasagna. Like how you fairly erased me from the obituary. Mom's voice dropped. Sabrina, you've always been independent. Strong. We thought you didn't need what Tyler did. You mean I didn't demand what he did? Tyler slammed his palm on the table, rattling the silverware. You think you're so much better than us. That's always been your problem. I stared at him. What exactly did I get handed, Tyler? The scholarship I earned? The job I clawed my way into? The apartment I bought after working 16-hour days? Silence. Mom composed herself. We all made mistakes. But if you don't want to destroy this family, you'll reconsider. I stood, calm now, the fury finally burning clean. You already destroyed it when you lied to me about the one person who truly loved me. Dad looked stricken. Please, let's talk more. We can work this out. I'll have my lawyer contact you, I said, stepping back. About the furniture, the jewelry, and the loans. All of it. Mom's voice cracked. If you do this, don't expect to be welcomed back. I paused at the edge of the table, then turned to her. You already told me not to come home for Christmas, Mom. I think we're well past welcome. And with that, I walked out. I didn't cry in the parking lot. I thought I would, but I didn't. Instead, I sat in my car with the heat blasting and watched the Hilton's revolving doors spin behind me, feeling a strange, quiet stillness settle over everything. The kind of stillness that comes not from peace, but from clarity. I called Benjamin Crane as soon as I got home. We move forward, I told him. No more talking. No more brunches. I want everything documented, everything protected. He didn't hesitate. Understood. I'll file formal notices regarding asset recovery and begin drafting cease and desist letters related to any defamatory statements. We'll also prepare to reclaim the personal property and address the misuse of your grandmother's estate. What followed was relentless. Over the next few weeks, my inbox flooded with notifications. Tyler had shown up at my office building, screaming obscenities in the lobby until security escorted him out. My mother posted a vague status on Facebook, something about children who destroy their families chasing money, and her church friends swarmed it with praying hands and broken heart emojis. I received messages from extended family, some cautiously neutral, others not so much. Aunt Cheryl called to say I was breaking my mother's heart. Cousin Ryan texted, "Did you really cut them out over money?" Only Aunt Iris said what I needed to hear. I always suspected Beatrice knew what she was doing. Don't let them gaslight you, sweetheart. I wanted to block them all. Instead, I opened a blank email and sent one sentence to Benjamin. File the restraining order. We moved swiftly. A protection order against Tyler. A cease and desist against my mother and father. A formal letter demanding the return of personal property taken from the house, including the side table, the antique books, and the painting Grandma had always said would be mine someday. Through all of it, I tried to work. I really did. But my team noticed. My creative direction was off. I missed deadlines. I left meetings halfway through. Eventually, my boss pulled me into her office, shut the door, and said simply, "Take time. We've got this." The kindness broke something loose in me. I walked out of her office and sat in the bathroom stall, sobbing into my scarf like a woman unraveling thread by thread. Natalie was the one who helped me stitch it back together. She started screening my calls, blocking numbers, leaving care packages at my door, and most of all reminding me who I was. "You're not wrong," she whispered over tea one night. "You're just the first one who stopped lying." Therapy helped too. I started seeing a woman named Dr. Estelle Chen, who listened to me talk about guilt and legacy and grief and never once asked why I didn't just go home. "Would you want contact with them again if they changed?" she asked during one session. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. "I don't even know who they are anymore," I whispered. She nodded. "That's grief talking. Not just for your grandmother, but for the version of family you thought you had." Those words echoed inside me for days, because it was true. I wasn't just mourning Grandma B. I was mourning every Christmas card lie, every forced smile in family photos, every time I thought maybe this year they'll see me. But they never did. Only she did. Only Grandma. So I poured my grief into something real. With Benjamin's help, I began the paperwork to establish the Beatrice Holloway Foundation, focused on educational grants for young women from rural backgrounds, especially those who, like me, had been overlooked in favor of someone louder, needier, or more charming. It wasn't charity. It was reclamation. This was how I would honor her. This was how I would survive. By spring, the smear campaign had slowed. Tyler's messages stopped after the restraining order was served. My parents' Facebook posts grew quieter. Their lawyer began corresponding through Benjamin instead of passive-aggressive emails. And I began breathing again. Not deeply, not all the way, but for the first time in months, the air no longer tasted like ash. By April, Boston thawed. So did I. Benjamin introduced me to a financial advisor named Karen Liu, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who reviewed the numbers of my inheritance like she was studying battlefield logistics. "The house is still valuable," she said, tapping her screen, "but the loans they took out against it have eaten away a good chunk. The good news is your grandmother invested with long-term stability in mind. Mutual funds, municipal bonds, nothing flashy, very her. We built a plan, not just for preservation, but for intention. I didn't want the money to sit idle, or worse, become some cursed relic of pain. So I made decisions. We hired a property manager for Grandma's house in Lancaster. I didn't want to sell it. It still held her scent, her sunlight, but I couldn't live in the same town as my parents either. We turned it into a rental property, and the income helped fund the foundation. I kept only a few items: the pressed flower lamp, the plaid armchair, the kitchen apron she'd embroidered with BEA's Peach Pie Army. Everything else I let go. I launched the Beatrice Holloway Foundation for Educational Equity in May. We awarded our first scholarships to 5 first-generation college students. When I signed those letters, I felt something shift inside me, like a window opened in a room that had been locked for years. One afternoon in early June, I received an email that stopped me cold. Subject line: "Sincere apology from Caroline Denton Sabrina. I owe you an apology. I was invited to your family's Christmas under the belief that you had chosen not to attend due to work stress. Your mother assured me you were fine with the arrangement. I never would have accepted the invitation had I known the truth. More recently, I've discovered they had other reasons for reaching out to me, namely my connections to estate attorneys. I feel used. I'm deeply sorry for my role in this situation, however unintentional." I closed the email and stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I already knew the truth. But now I had confirmation. By July, the final numbers came in. After loan resolutions, legal fees, and asset recovery, my inheritance stood at just over $800,000. I had never seen that many zeros in one place. And yet, the most valuable thing I'd gained wasn't in a bank account. It was in the silence, the boundaries, the nights I slept through without dreaming of arguments. August brought a letter from my father, handwritten, no return address. "I'm sorry, Libby, for everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do wish you peace." I folded the letter and slid it into a box labeled "Unsent Apologies." I didn't cry. Not this time. Fall rolled in with its burnished skies and long shadows. The plaid armchair now sat in my reading nook beside the window. I draped it with one of Grandma's old quilts, and on Saturday mornings I curled there with a mug of coffee and a stack of essays from scholarship applicants. Then came December, 1 year since the call. This time I hosted Christmas. Natalie brought cinnamon rolls and peppermint bark. My co-worker, Sam, brought wine. My therapist, Dr. Chin, sent a card that read, "Healing isn't linear, but your boundaries are a map." Even Eric, the architect I'd met at a nonprofit event, came with homemade cider and the calm presence of someone who asked nothing of me except honesty. As fairy lights twinkled and Nat King Cole's voice filled my apartment, I stirred mulled cider and glanced around the room. Laughter, soft piano music, the hum of belonging. Not the family I was born into, but the one I chose, and in that moment I knew I hadn't just inherited a house, or stocks, or jewelry. I'd inherited freedom. The first snow fell 2 days after Christmas. Thick, soft, silent. I watched it drift past my apartment window while sipping the last of the cider. The the mug warming my hands the way my grandmother's voice once warmed a room. A year ago, I had cried through Christmas, wondered if I was the problem, questioned whether setting boundaries meant losing love. Now I knew the truth. Love that punishes your honesty isn't love. Love that demands silence in the face of abuse isn't love. It took losing everything I thought I needed to finally understand what I actually deserved. Peace, respect, a place where my presence wasn't tolerated, but welcomed. In early January, the foundation received its first handwritten thank you letter from a scholarship recipient, a 17-year-old girl named Kiara, who wrote, "No one in my family thought college was realistic. But your letter made me believe maybe I'm not crazy to dream bigger." I cried reading it, not out of sadness, but recognition. I knew that feeling, of shrinking to fit, of apologizing for your light because it hurt someone else's eyes. In February, I visited Grandma's grave for the first time. I brought her favorite flowers, purple zinnias, and placed the antique ring on my finger, the one she had saved from being pawned. "I used to think I'd never be enough," I whispered to the cold wind. "But you saw me, and now I see myself." The stone was simple. Beatrice Holloway, 1935, 2023. Beloved teacher, gardener, grandmother. I pressed my hand to the stone. "Thank you for choosing me," I said. "Thank you for giving me the kind of love that didn't have conditions." As spring bloomed again, so did I. I stopped explaining my decisions, stopped seeking permission for my boundaries, stopped answering messages that only brought anxiety. I didn't block my parents. I didn't need to. The silence between us had become its own boundary, an ocean I had no desire to cross. There were still moments of grief, times I'd pass a bakery and remember my mother's cinnamon rolls. A song would come on the radio that my father used to hum. I'd see a woman and son shopping together and feel a pang of something I couldn't name. But those moments didn't own me anymore. Forgiveness came slowly. Not for them. For myself. For the years I twisted myself into someone smaller. For believing their love was something I had to earn. For staying too long at tables where no one saved me a seat. By summer, the foundation expanded. We added mentorship programs, held our first local fundraiser. Natalie gave a speech that left the entire room misty-eyed. Eric and I took a trip to the coast in July. We walked barefoot on the sand, and for the first time in years, I laughed without a single part of me wondering whether someone else was watching, judging, keeping score. "I like who you are when no one's expecting you to explain," he said softly. I smiled. "So do I. I don't know if my family will ever change. Maybe one day I'll hear that Tyler finally took responsibility, that my father spoke my name with pride again, that my mother realized her grief didn't give her the right to control everyone around her. But if they never do, I'll still be okay, because I'm no longer living for invitations that never come, no longer waiting to be welcomed into a family that built its walls to keep me out. This isn't bitterness. It's clarity. This isn't revenge. It's recovery. I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped walking toward ones that always collapsed beneath me. And the most valuable inheritance my grandmother ever gave me wasn't her house, or her jewelry, or her money. It was the knowledge that my worth isn't measured by people who refuse to see it. So if you're listening to this, and you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, if you've ever been told you're too much, too cold, too sensitive, too dramatic, let me be the one to say it. You're not. You're just finally telling the truth out loud, and you deserve to be heard.